Hey guys, tonight we travel into the heart of an empire that didn't just whisper through history. It traded in whispers. Picture this: the wind hisses over an endless sea of sand, hot enough to fry the soles off your shoes. You've wandered into the Sahel, that broad band of scorched earth between the Sahara and the lush green jungles of West Africa. Your skin is already coated in a sheen of sweat and fine yellow dust. In the distance, a long line of camels slinks across the horizon like beads on a necklace. They're carrying salt, yes, salt. And if you're not careful, you'll find out just how valuable it really is. Spoiler, more valuable than your little stash of gold. Oh, and one more thing. You probably won't survive this trip. The desert doesn't play favorites. Between the heat, the thirst, the bandits, and the trade routes crawling with secrets, things could go south real fast. But don't worry, we've got history on our side. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing just outside the ancient gates of Kumbi Saleh, the bustling double capital of the Ghana Empire. Not to be confused with modern Ghana, it's way up north, brushing the edge of the Sahara. It's the 9th century, give or take a few skeptical historians. And you're here to witness something few outsiders ever get to see: silent trade. The wind flutters through your robe as you inch closer, the red dust puffing beneath your sandals. This place breathes mystery. 2 cities in one. One half is all about Islam mosques, markets, scholars debating theology under shade trees. The other, pure old-school West African royalty. And somewhere between those two worlds, silence reigns over the most valuable trade network in the ancient world. You pass under a carved archway into the market district. No loud haggling, no shouting over prices. Just motion. Traders in long indigo robes signal silently to each other, nodding. Pointing, gesturing with long, graceful hands. It's like watching a pantomime ballet, except the props are leather bags of gold and enormous slabs of salt. And everyone's deadly serious. The silence isn't just some cute tradition. It's law. It's ritual. It's how this place has survived and thrived. The Ghanaian kings don't just allow the silence, they enforce it. Break the code and you risk more than a rude glare. You might find yourself disappeared faster than you can say bar of salt. Historians still argue whether this form of trade was truly completely silent, or if some whispered bartering happened behind woven mats. But oral accounts. Arab geographers and stubborn griots all agree on one thing: this system was no joke. Gold and salt changed hands without a single spoken word. You shuffle between stalls, taking in the smells. Roasted millet, dried fish, a hint of something. Sweet date wine. Fermented and faintly smoky. A merchant locks eyes with you and taps 2 fingers against a basket. You nod. He walks away. You peek inside a small pile of gold dust glitters under a cloth. You've just witnessed a deposit. He'll be back later, maybe. Meanwhile, camels chew thoughtfully in the distance. Their riders, often Berbers from the north, are off tending to worn leather saddles or scraping dried blood off their swords. No one's pretending this journey is safe. Those who move goods through the Sahara earn their profits with cracked lips and calloused hands. Here's the kicker: Ghana itself didn't actually mine much gold. That all came from south of the empire, from mysterious places like Wangra, where the rivers practically bleed gold. Ghana's power came from controlling the middle of the trade. You don't own the mines, but you own the roads, the guards, the taxes. And maybe the secrets too. And salt. Oh, it's everything. Not just for flavor. In this heat, salt keeps you alive. It preserves meat cures. Fish replaces what your body sweats out. People crave it. Some even need it. And in a kingdom where meat dries in the sun and fish travels for days, salt is salvation. Quirky side note, some records suggest the people of Tagaza, a major salt-producing village, built their houses from salt blocks. No, really. Walls made of shimmering white bricks slowly melting under the sun. Probably not ideal in a rainstorm, but hey, when salt's your main gig, you work with what you've got. But here's the real wonder of it all. You watch two traders perform a transaction entirely without speech. One places gold and leaves. The other arrives, sets down a stack of salt, and walks away. The first returns. If satisfied, he takes the salt. If not, he leaves the gold and waits for a better offer. No threats, no shouting. Just trust or fear, or maybe something older, something sacred. Some say this custom was rooted in avoiding conflict between cultures Muslim Berbers from the north and traditional West African animists from the south. Words could spark fights, silence. Silence keeps the peace. Historians still debate whether this was born from diplomacy or superstition or both. But it worked. So here you are, a silent observer in a silent economy, trying not to sneeze or step on a goat's tail. The sun lowers behind you, casting long shadows across the baked earth. Gold glints, salt gleams, and not a single word floats through the air. You wake to the sound of drums rolling across the dawn like thunder without rain. Not angry drums, these are ceremonial, steady pulsing through your chest like a second heartbeat. Somewhere beyond the camel pens and clay-walled compounds, a royal procession is beginning. And just like that, you're not just watching history, you're feeling it move. You're in the Ghana Empire again, but this time, further inside its beating heart. And it's not just camels and quiet markets. It's warriors in leather armor, their hair braided with copper wire. It's priests with faces painted in chalky white, carrying iron staffs carved with sacred signs. It's royalty on horseback, shaded by ostrich feather fans, while the rest of the world swelters. This is an empire of contrast, sand and gold, salt and spirit war and silence. The people here don't call it Ghana. That's the king's title, not the land. The Ghana is the war chief, the sacred ruler, the divine spine of the kingdom. The land, the capital. It's Kumbi Saleh. At its peak, this city may have had 20,000 people. Half Muslim merchants, half animist nobles and warriors, separated by a buffer zone like a diplomatic DMZ. Historians still argue whether Ghana was a unified empire or more of a confederation of allied tribes bound together by trade and tribute. What's not debated, it had power, it had gold, and it knew how to flex both. You wander past a formation of soldiers training just outside the palace. Their barefoot lean eyes focused. Their weapons are simple short spears, oval shields, knives worn at the waist, but don't let that fool you. These aren't ornamental guards. These are the reason rival kingdoms think twice before sending armies this way. Behind them, a griot is already singing the king's deeds, beating a one-stringed instrument and reciting in hypnotic rhythm how the Ghana crushed the Soso, how he took 10 horses as tribute from the king of Takrur, how he summoned rain by burying a leopard skull under a baobab tree. True debatable. Epic always. And yes, there were battles. Ghana didn't just sit back and let riches roll in. The empire expanded by force, absorbing smaller chiefdoms, seizing control of vital trade choke points and demanding tribute in gold dust and slaves. Slavery, by the way, was deeply woven into the economic fabric captives. From raids often became the muscle behind mining, salt hauling, and agricultural labor. Uncomfortable truth, but no bedtime story worth telling, should leave out the shadows. You stroll through a royal compound, ringed with sun-hardened clay walls. Children chase goats between courtyards. A woman grinds millet by a stone slab, humming in a minor key. Everything feels still and eternal, like time has slowed to a crawl beneath the heat. Then boom, another drumbeat, and you catch a glimpse of the king himself, though only just. His robes shimmer with gold thread. He rides a white horse, which isn't just rare here, it's sacred. His attendants fan him with eagle feathers, and 10 dogs run beside him, each with golden collars. Legend says the king owns hundreds of them and feeds them from a bowl made of pure silver. You think that's rich? Try this. Some Arab travelers claim the Ghana king owned dogs with gold chains heavier than a grown man's arm. And sure, some of these travelers also believed in flying snakes and desert jinns, but still, when that many sources agree on gold-dripping dogs, you gotta believe somebody was showing off. There's also a ceremony underway tribute day. Vassal chiefs have arrived bearing their gifts bundles of gold dust in gourds, slabs of salt wrapped in hide, and sometimes children. The line between diplomatic hostage and royal ward is fuzzy, but in Ghana, it's both insurance and honor. One quirky practice you'd almost miss. The king's court employs double interpreters. One translator speaks the merchant's language into another local dialect, which a second interpreter then relays into the king's own tongue. It's like a game of historical telephone. Why? Probably a mix of tradition, security, and dramatic flair. And still everything is measured, formal, controlled. You lean against a wooden pillar carved with symbols of snakes and sunbursts trying to stay in the shade. A guard eyes you, not unfriendly, just alert. In this empire, the line between visitor and spy is thinner than a grain of sand. You smile. He doesn't. In the distance, a caravan approaches. Dust billows around the camels, their burdens wrapped in leather and mystery. They've come from the north, maybe from Oudacast, maybe even from as far as Sijil Massa, deep in Morocco. They've crossed weeks of desert-survived raids and storms, and they've brought salt. The kind of salt that turns silent marketplaces into rivers of gold. And behind the caravan, a trail of stories, always stories. One tale says that before the Ghana Empire became mighty, a blacksmith king struck a bargain with the forest spirits, trading his own shadow for the power to melt iron with a whisper. Another tells of a lake that appeared overnight after a royal sacrifice. Historians roll their eyes. Griots just smile. They know that history and myth often share the same bed and snore in harmony. You sit in the fading sun as the drums fall quiet. A breeze stirs the palm fronds overhead. Traders begin laying out their goods beneath shaded awnings. You catch the glitter of gold dust in a gourd. Somewhere nearby, the first grain of salt hits the ground with a soft, sacred clink. And just like that, the trade begins again without a single word. You trudge across an endless dune, the sun hammering down like it's trying to flatten your soul. The sand squeaks beneath your feet. Yes, sand can squeak when it's this dry, this fine. Ahead, a mirage shimmers like a distant promise. But it's not water you're after. It's salt. And believe it or not, you're filthy rich if you're carrying it. Here in West Africa, salt isn't just a seasoning. It's not some humble dust you toss over your fries. Salt is currency. Salt is life. Salt is worth its weight in gold, sometimes more. Yes, you heard that right. In fact, many accounts from Arab scholars like al-Bakri describe trades where 1 ounce of salt fetched 1 ounce of gold. To modern ears, that sounds like a glitch in the economic matrix. But here, in the sun-blasted world of Ghana, where sweat flows like rivers and meat spoils in minutes, salt is sacred. You crouch near a caravan unloading at the edge of a bustling market. Camels grunt, stretch, and finally kneel with loud groans of relief. Their hides are coated in crusty sweat, and their loads thick slabs of rock salt, hacked from the Saharan mines, are being stacked like treasure. Traders from the south eye the blocks with barely disguised hunger. Their gold is already in hand. This is where things get real. You move between groups of merchants, some wearing colorful wax-dyed cotton, others in plain wool from the north. They don't shout or jostle. There's a calm intensity to it all, a kind of sacred order. People here don't just want salt, they need it. You hear someone whisper that entire families survive by licking flakes off stored salt when food is scarce. Babies are fed it dissolved in goat's milk. Warriors rub it into wounds. And it's not just table salt either. This stuff is chunky raw and packed with minerals. Some slabs are streaked with red or gray, veined like ancient marble. It's heavy, it's holy. But why does gold, a soft, gleaming, decorative metal, hold less power here than salt? Well, that depends on where you stand. You see, gold came from the south, from regions like Wangara, cloaked in forest and river and secrecy. There, gold dust is almost casual, washed from streams, traded for cloth even used in healing rituals. But salt, that has to travel. It's mined under brutal conditions in the salt camps of Tagaza or Tagaza in the blistering Sahara. Then it's dragged hundreds of miles across open desert. Every block of salt is a survivor. Historians still argue whether gold was more valuable than salt in economic terms, or whether its cultural symbolism outweighed practical use. But value isn't just about rarity, it's about need. You can't eat gold, you can't stop a heat stroke with gold, but salt keeps you alive. You wander to the edge of a trader's tent where a Berber man gestures toward a chunk of salt the size of your thigh. He taps it once, then points to a small leather pouch. Inside, gold dust packed tight. No words are exchanged. A younger boy sprinkles a few grains onto a flat slate, measuring its shimmer in the light. He nods. The deal is done. That's the beauty of it. No taxes, no bargaining, no yelling, just quiet respect. But it wasn't all kumbaya. This level of trade power brought enemies. Rival kingdoms to the south and east grew jealous. Bandits stalked the desert trails, and worse, desert raiders began forging fake salt chipping chunks of hardened gypsum or limestone, hoping no one would notice until they disappeared into the dunes. To counter that, salt testers, yes, that was a job. You'd find them scattered around the trading posts, old men with worn teeth hired to lick and scratch every slab brought in. One wrong taste and the whole shipment could be rejected. You'd be surprised how seriously they took the licking business. Your job depended on your tongue. There's a small shrine in the middle of the market you almost missed. It's just a stack of stones circled with white shells and feathers. A local woman kneels beside it, mumbling into a leather pouch. You ask someone what she's doing. Blessing her salt, they whisper. Salt must be honored before it crosses into trade. It's not just trade, it's ritual. Quirky fact: some West African cultures believed salt had the power to repel spirits. It was sprinkled at thresholds, mixed into burial oils, even rubbed on weapons to wake them. Salt wasn't just food, it was armor for the soul. You sit down in the shade, finally letting the breeze dry the sweat on your neck. Nearby, two children fight over a flake of salt the size of a fingernail. Not out of hunger, out of desire. It's bright, crystalline, beautiful. One breaks it in half and offers it solemnly. A silent trade just like the grown-ups. This isn't just commerce, it's culture. The Kingdom of Ghana thrived not because it had the most gold, but because it sat at the crossroads of the ancient world's most brilliant paradox. Sometimes the thing you toss over your fries is worth more than the thing you put in your crown. You crouch in the shade of a cloth awning, your knees sore from the day's wandering. In front of you, two merchants begin their dance. No words, just glances. Nods. A few small movements of the fingers so subtle you'd miss them if you blinked. Welcome to the silent marketplace. It's not that no one can talk, it's that they don't. Out of tradition, caution, and maybe a bit of magic. In this quiet corner of the Ghana Empire, words can be weapons, and silence is currency. And you're lucky to be watching. The merchant on the left is Tuareg. His robes are indigo. His face half hidden behind a veil skin dusted with Saharan sand. His hands are strong-weathered, and as deliberate as a priest's. On the right, a local trader, probably Soninka, judging by the beads in his hair and the cowrie shells stitched into his belt. His smile is quick, but his eyes don't miss a thing. Between them sits a flat leather mat. First, the Tuareg man kneels and sets down a wrapped bundle. He unties it slowly, salt carved into neat blocks, each shaped like a wedge of cheese. Then he steps back, folds his hands, and waits. No eye contact now, just waiting. The Soninka trader examines the salt. He leans in, lifts a block, sniffs it, taps it against his teeth. A nod. Then he reaches into a gourd and sprinkles a fine line of gold dust across the mat. Not too much, not too little. Just enough. And then he walks away. You blink. Is that it? Minutes pass. A goat bleats somewhere. The Tuareg man steps forward. He weighs the gold in his palm, rubbing the dust between his fingers. He pauses, thinks. Then he gives a tiny, almost imperceptible shrug and takes both the gold and his salt. The trade is done. No words, no arguments, just silence. And here's the twist. If the gold hadn't been enough, he would have left the salt and walked away. The Soninka trader would then have to return and sweeten the offer. Add a little more gold. Maybe throw in a trinket or a length of cloth. Then leave E again. Only when both sides are satisfied and have both silently agreed does the trade conclude. Historians still debate how widespread this system really was. Some say it was used only between certain ethnic groups. Others argue it was a symbolic ritual, not a full economic model. Still others suggest it was mostly for foreign traders who didn't speak the local language. The truth somewhere in the middle, as usual. But one thing's clear, this wasn't just about economics. It was about trust, about boundaries, about a world where speaking too soon or too loud could unravel everything. And silence wasn't the only rule. Certain days were forbidden for trade. Some marketplaces required purification rituals before entry. Yes, literal purification. You might have to bathe in a sacred river, rub yourself with special herbs, or avoid eye contact with elders for a full day. One whispered story tells of a merchant who broke the silence rule and woke up the next morning to find his camels gone, his gold dust missing, and a mysterious mark carved into the salt slab he'd tried to sell. Coincidence, maybe. Or maybe the spirits of the market have their own sense of justice. You shift your weight and glance around. The air smells of dried fish sweat, and a hint of something floral frankincense, maybe. A breeze kicks up, fluttering the colored fabrics overhead. The market is alive but hushed. It moves like water over stone fluid, quiet, purposeful. You catch a moment of comedy, two boys mimicking their father's silent trades, except they keep bursting into laughter and spoiling the whole act. An elder claps her hands, once sharp echoing. The boys scatter like ants. Silence returns. Quirky fact, some merchants wore charms to protect their voices from slipping out accidentally. Leather pouches filled with feathers, teeth, bits of iron. The belief that spirits might snatch your words and twist your luck. Better to keep quiet and let the good speak. And really don't mistake this silence for weakness. There's power here. Each gesture is calculated, each nod speaks volumes. A misinterpreted sign could insult a lineage, offend a deity, or unravel years of peaceful trade. So you learn fast, don't talk, don't joke, don't flinch. Instead, you listen. Not to voices, but to rhythms. The quiet shuffle of feet on dust, the clink of gold dust into gourds, the slow exhale of camels at rest. The brush of fabric as a deal concludes. It's strangely soothing, almost meditative. You begin to understand why this system lasted for centuries. It doesn't just keep the peace, it creates peace. Because when nobody speaks, nobody yells. And when nobody yells, nobody fights. And when nobody fights, trade flows like water through the sand. You sit for a while longer, letting the rhythm settle into your bones. The market glows with the light of the sinking sun. Traders begin to pack up their deals, sealed in nothing but silence and dust. A man walks past carrying a block of salt on his back, the weight cutting into his shoulders, but his face calm. He nods at you. No words, none needed. You slip into the outer courtyard just as the sun begins to swell above the horizon, casting everything in a honey-colored glow. It's quiet here, but not market quiet. No traders gesturing, no clinking of gold. Just an eerie stillness, like the world is holding its breath. You've made it to the palace, and you're about to witness one of the strangest royal customs in the empire. The King of Ghana. The Ghana himself does not eat in public. Not with his advisors, not with his guards, not even with his family. No one watches the king eat, no one hears him chew, and no one dares to ask what's in his bowl. You lean against a pillar carved with lizards and suns just beyond the throne chamber, careful not to be seen. This isn't a tourist spot. You're deep in sacred territory now, where tradition moves slower and bites harder. The king is already seated. You can't see his face, only the elaborate curtain of gold-threaded cloth that separates him from the crowd. Every detail in this palace drips with symbolism. From the lion skins underfoot to the horned staffs propped beside the throne, nothing here is random. But it's the food ritual that grips you most. Servants enter with bowls, some steaming, some cool. They walk in silence, heads lowered. Each dish is inspected, offered to the king behind the curtain. Then the servants withdraw. And then, nothing. No clatter, no slurping, no murmurs of approval. Just the whisper of wind and the soft thok-thok of a fan swaying from the ceiling. Why so secretive? Historians still argue about this custom. Was it spiritual, political? Was the king hiding something, an illness, a disfigurement, even a symbolic transformation during meals? Some think it was about preserving divine mystique. Gods don't eat like mortals, so neither should kings. Or maybe it was purely practical. Poison was a constant fear, and secrecy was the best defense. Even his food tasters never saw him consume a bite. But here's what you can see the respect. It's baked into every gesture, every bowed head. No one raises their voice. No one enters uninvited. Even nobles speak through intermediaries, layering each message like a verbal onion. The Ghana is sacred, untouchable, and definitely not someone you bump into in the food court. And that divinity, it's more than just politics, it's cosmology. Local belief systems position the king as the mediator between the mortal world and the spirit realm. He didn't just rule, he balanced things. Rainfall, fertility, victory, and war, they were tied to his well-being. If the king stumbles, the kingdom shudders. You wander into the side chamber where court musicians play gently on balafons and flutes their rhythms, slow, hypnotic. A praise singer chants the names of the king's ancestors, each syllable like a footstep climbing into the past. Outside, commoners gather near the wall, hoping for a glimpse. Just a silhouette, just a gesture from behind the curtain. That's enough. You overhear one elder telling a child to see the Ghana eat is to forget your own hunger forever. The kid nods wide-eyed, clutching a mango like it's a relic. A quirky detail. Some believe the king was so sacred, his spit could bless crops or cure fevers. A little much maybe, but you'd be amazed what people line up for in hard times. There are even stories of nobles collecting the dust where the king walked and mixing it into medicine. Gross, sure. But effective, the belief alone could work wonders. And it wasn't just about the king. The entire palace complex was a theater of divine mystery. Guards didn't just carry weapons, they carried amulets and charms bone whistles to call ancestral spirits. The walls were smeared with ochre during ceremonies, and during royal funerals, entire processions marched backward so the dead king's spirit wouldn't follow them home. You wander to a courtyard lined with baobab trees, their trunks thick and twisted like sleeping giants. Under one sits a man scribbling on wooden tablets with a reed pen, an Islamic scholar perhaps copying Quranic verses or calculating tribute records. He looks up, briefly nods, then returns to his work. Even here in a world thick with gods and gold, the pen has found its way. So here's this paradox again. A kingdom with a silent trade and loud rituals, a king who doesn't eat in public, but rules like a sun god, and a people who believe both in spirits and in spreadsheets. The light fades, the king's curtain stirs once more. Someone clears the bowls, no one says a word. The Ghana has eaten, or hasn't, and just like that, the power remains intact. You lie low behind a basket of cola nuts, the air thick with incense and sweat, and you try not to sneeze. If you give yourself away now, you'll miss the show. And in this corner of the Ghana Empire, the show means something rare, something ritualistic, something dead quiet. This is the moment when the silent trade begins. No bargaining, no arguing, no multilingual haggling over exchange rates. Just a flat patch of earth, a mat of woven reeds, and a pile of gold dust waiting like a question mark. Across from you, under a spindly acacia tree, a group of Berber traders from the north has just finished laying out their goods, thick slabs of salt and hand-carved tools wrapped in goat leather. They don't linger. With barely a glance behind them, they retreat several paces into the shadows. And wait. A beat. Then from the forest edge come the southerners. These are the gold folk, the elusive Wangra who rarely show themselves. They move carefully, their faces partially veiled. Their clothes patterned in deep browns and reds. Their approach is slow, respectful. You almost miss it the way their eyes flicker to the salt, then to each other, then to the mat between. One of them steps forward. He squats, examines the salt, lifts a piece, and taps it gently against the ground. No cracks, no flaws. He grunts a tiny sound, barely audible. Then he reaches into a leather pouch and pours a line of gold dust next to the salt. He stands, turns, walks away. The others follow, disappearing into the trees again like whispers in the wind. Still no words. Now it's the Berbers' turn again. They reapproach slowly, inspecting the gold, not just by weight, but by color, by feel. One man rubs a bit between his fingers, lets it catch the sun, mutters something under his breath. You can't tell if he's impressed or offended. Probably both. He pauses. Then they leave everything exactly where it is and walk away again. Negotiations still happening, just silently and on a 30-minute delay. When the Wangara return, they see the gold untouched. That means the Berbers want more. Another handful of dust is added, another retreat, another long wait. And so it continues. Historians still argue how much of this was about language barriers and how much was deliberate ritual. Some believe the Wangara kept the location of their gold mines secret, even from their own allies, so they refused to speak directly with anyone outside their kin. Others argue it was about power controlling. The flow of conversation was a way to control the value of the trade. But here's something even stranger: the deals were almost always fair. Not perfectly balanced, sure, someone always gets a slightly better cut, but rarely did either side cheat, rob, or retaliate. Why? Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was respect. Maybe it was just really bad form to break the code. Quirky fact. There's a rumor, half truth, half bedtime threat, that anyone who tried to steal gold during a silent trade would be cursed by desert spirits. One version claims your voice would be stolen forever. Another, that your teeth would slowly turn to salt and dissolve in your mouth. Weird, yes, but enough to make people think twice. You squint and see a goat herder in the distance watching the whole affair from behind a tree. His herd is silent too, oddly enough, like they've been trained to respect the ritual. Or maybe they're just goats, hard to tell. Nearby, a local griot plucks a stringed instrument, softly narrating a version of the scene in poetic fragments. His voice is low, rhythmic, hypnotic. You can't understand every word, but you catch a phrase. Gold cannot speak, so we must learn its language. That sticks with you. You begin to notice the choreography. Each movement is deliberate, each pause rehearsed over generations. This isn't just barter, it's performance. And you're the audience. Eventually, the deal concludes. The Berbers return, see the new offering of gold, and this time they nod silently. The salt and the gold are both taken. No handshakes, no contracts. Just mutual satisfaction and maybe mutual awe. You sit back and breathe in the dust, the dry wood smoke, the slightly musty scent of camels. All around you, the silence lingers, not heavy, not awkward, just present. Like the market itself is alive and has no need for noise. Later, a boy offers you water in a calabash bowl. He points toward the empty mat and grins. Good trade, he whispers, then adds, "You talk too much." Fair. Because here, silence isn't empty. It's full of respective rules of memory. And in the stillness between footsteps and gold dust, you finally understand this was never just about the salt. It was about keeping something sacred from being spoken out of existence. You're walking behind a caravan now. 40 camels deep, each one plodding along like it's seen this same road in 10 different centuries. The horizon trembles in the heat, and all you hear is the creak of leather, the occasional grunt of an annoyed camel, and the flap of woven tents packed tight on their humps. The air tastes like sand and something sharp metallic. Maybe it's the sword tied to the belt of the man in front of you. You've joined the Berbers. These aren't your quiet market day traders anymore. These are the desert wolves, nomads, scouts, salt haulers, and sometimes spies moving between empires with blades under their robes and secrets in their eyes. They're the ones who made silent trade possible by risking everything in the in-between. And they don't just carry salt. You pass a camel loaded with indigo cloth, the kind so rich in color it stains the fingers for days. It smells bitter and earthy like fermented leaves and copper. It's from the north, far beyond the dunes, where merchants dye fabrics in vats buried underground. That blue cloth people down south would trade a goat for it. Maybe two if it's well stitched. Further back in the caravan, there are bolts of linen sacks of dates, jars of olive oil sealed with wax. There's even a batch of swords short-curved deadly. The kind you don't just wear, you display, letting the hilt glint from beneath your robe like a whispered threat. And let's not ignore the smaller things. Dried rose petals, tiny mirrors from Al-Andalus prayer beads of polished bone. Trinkets, yes, but trinkets with power. Charm sellers in Ghana might bless one of those beads and promise it could help you find gold. Or lose a rival in the dark. Historians often paint these Berber caravans as just delivery crews, but that's like calling a war elephant a really big mule. These were political agents, scouts, deal makers. Some were full-time traders, others doubled as informants. You don't travel 800 miles without learning whose empire is rising and whose is crumbling under its own gold weight. And sometimes they came with agendas. One Berber chieftain, it said, arrived in Ghana not to trade, but to convert. With Quran in hand and salt on camels, he sought to spread Islam deeper into the Sahel. Didn't ask. Didn't wait. Just started preaching at a well. Legend says he left 2 weeks later with a bruised face, a broken staff, and no camels, but the idea stuck. Over time, these trade caravans didn't just bring goods, they brought ideas. Islam spread quietly at first, not with swords, but with scrolls. Traders offered more than profit, they brought literacy, law, a connection to Mecca and beyond. You could pray 5 times a day and still haggle for gold like a pro. Quirky footnote. Berbers often packed dried lemons on long journeys, not just for flavor, but as medicine. A few thin slices were worth their weight in coin if someone got desert fever. So yes, somewhere between your slabs of salt and bars of gold, someone was haggling over a really good citrus. The caravan finally halts at a small oasis. You see a camp being assembled with fluid efficiency tents raised in minutes goats, watered from shallow wells, guards posted in rotating shifts. Every move is planned, every rest stop calculated. These people don't hope to survive the Sahara. They know how to. Nearby 2 men argue not loudly but intensely. One gestures toward a leather scrolled seal. Broken. A letter maybe. Instructions. Or a warning. You catch the phrase Tedmecca, another desert city, another trading partner? Could be they just lost a shipment. Or worse, someone switched sides. You never really know who's loyal out here. The gold is too tempting, and a single whispered rumor about a hidden mine or weakly guarded route can shift the balance of power. Still, there's a strange kind of honor among them. When it's time to move again, a young boy sings a caravan song low and rhythmic, more chant than melody. The camels respond grunting and rising. Everyone has a role. Even the sky, slowly bleeding from blue to amber, seems to fall in line. Historians still debate whether the Berbers acted primarily as free agents or state-sponsored emissaries. But whatever they were, they carried more than salt. They carried the glue that held together kingdoms that never spoke and never needed to. You walk a little further. The sun sets. Fires are lit. And somewhere in the dark, someone tells a joke in Tamashek that makes half the camp laugh and the other half draw their knives. Typical. You wake in the blue-gray pre-dawn chill, huddled beside a camel that smells like warm leather and last night's cabbage. The sky is flat and silent like the inside of a sealed pot. Around you, the Berbers are already packing camp. Rolling mats, coiling ropes, stirring embers back into flame for one last smoky breakfast of dried meat and sour bread. You blink sand from your eyes and remember where you are somewhere between Tehaza and the edge of the Ghana Empire on a trail not found on maps because the people who use it don't need maps. They carry it in their heads, and their heads carry everything prices, politics, rivalries, omens. But today you're headed to Tehaza itself, a place that sounds made up when you first hear about it. A city made of salt. No, really. As you draw near, the land flattens into white crusts. There's no greenery, no birdsong, not even a scorpion in sight. Just salt. Miles and miles of it cracked like shattered porcelain. And right in the middle, squat buildings made from enormous salt blocks, stacked mortared, chiseled into something almost resembling homes. You've arrived at one of the Sahara's strangest outposts, a town that looks like it was built by very determined ghosts with a taste for seasoning. Tehaza exists for one reason, only salt extraction. There's no farming, no water, not even a proper market. Just the mines, the workers, and the caravans that come to take the product far away to places where gold shimmers and children fight over salt flakes like candy. You approach a pit and peer in. It's not deep, but it's brutal. Men stand waist-deep hacking at the salty ground with heavy tools. Their skin is pale with dust and their eyes are red-rimmed from the glare. They look up at you without curiosity, just tired acceptance. Quirky fact, some of these workers were enslaved captives from raids, convicts, or political prisoners. Others were local laborers trying to survive. But either way, the mines demanded a heavy price. Salt dust in your lungs, cracked hands, no shade for days. and no fresh water for miles. You meet a man with a crooked smile who tells you with what might be sarcasm, Takhaza is where your skin becomes salt too. You nod politely and move on. There's a strange rhythm here. The workers dig. They slice the salt into rectangles. They stack it into pyramids. Then they sleep. Then they do it again. Every once in a while, a caravan arrives, takes the slabs, drops off food and cloth, maybe a bottle of date wine if someone was feeling generous, then gone. And yet this place matters. Maybe more than anywhere else on the trade route. Why? Because every empire from Ghana to Mali to Songhai needed this stuff. Salt wasn't just a trade item. It was a strategic asset. Whoever controlled Takhaza controlled the veins of the gold salt trade. And that made this sun-bleached town worth defending, even dying for. Historians still argue whether Ghana directly controlled the Takhaza mines or simply taxed the caravans passing through. Some sources claim a royal garrison was stationed here. Others suggest it was more of a protection racket, you pay tribute, we don't burn your camel. Either way, Ghana profited handsomely from what came out of the ground here. You wander past one of the salt houses. It creaks ominously in the wind. Some of the older slabs have melted slightly, warping the walls like sagging cake frosting. During the rainy season, if you can even call it that, some buildings literally dissolve. Which raises the question, do you rebuild with salt? Again. Or just accept that everything here is temporary? The answer apparently is yes. Everything in Takhaza is temporary, but everything in Takhaza is crucial. You pause at a shrine, a single upright salt block with carvings so faint you almost miss them. Wavy lines, a lizard, a crude camel. Offerings sit at its base. Bits of food, a strip of cloth. A coin pressed halfway into the dust. You ask someone what the shrine is for. For the spirit of the salt, they say simply. We ask it not to take too much of us. Another man adds, we give a little to get a little. And there it is, the silent economy at its rawest. You trade with people, yes. But you also trade with the land, with the gods, with the very material you're harvesting. The wind picks up, carrying the sting of salt into your throat. You cough, wipe your face, and notice your lips have gone dry again, cracked and burning. You lick them instinctively. Bad idea. It only gets worse. This is Takhaza's curse. It gives the world what it needs and slowly takes everything from those who give it. As the sun begins to set, the whole landscape glows pink and gold like a mirage carved from sugar. Camels rest, men sleep. Salt blocks glisten like treasure. And in that moment, the irony hits you in a place made of salt. The only thing rarer than gold is water. You're back on the move again, trailing behind a caravan that's become part family, part traveling circus, and part mobile stock exchange. The camels creak under their loads. The Berbers hum half songs to keep pace. And you've started measuring time by sunsets and how many blisters you can count on your feet. But today's different. Today, you're crossing into the southern edge of the Ghana Empire's heartland, where the trade caravans finally tip their gold-laden backs and unload into the royal coffers. And you're about to see how a kingdom turns all that glitter into control. First, stop the customs post. Don't expect a booth in a uniform. This is a clearing shaded by baobab trees and manned by warriors with spears, their eyes sharp and unblinking. One by one, caravans are halted. Salt is counted. Gold dust is weighed. Names are noted on leather scrolls with markings so intricate they look like spells. Then comes the part no one likes. A portion of your goods, yes, yours is taken. Not stolen, not bribed. Taxed. This is the Ghanaian import-export system in action. And it's not exactly subtle. 2/3 of the gold that entered the kingdom had to be handed over as duty. Let that sink in. You haul a ton of gold across 1,000 miles, fight off raiders, outrun a sandstorm, and then bam! Most of it is collected before you can even haggle. Historians still argue about how consistent or centralized this system really was. Some claim it was flexible based on loyalty or negotiations. Others insist it was rigid, mathematically enforced by weight region and even season. The truth, probably both. Bureaucracy wrapped in tradition. The remaining 1/3, that was yours to sell. And in a place where a single pinch of gold dust could buy a goat, you weren't exactly going home poor. You pass into the city proper now, past stone-lined streets and long mud brick houses with straw roofs that shimmer like golden hay under the sun. Kumbi Saleh is alive. On one side, the Muslim quarter hums with the sound of prayer calls, the scratch of scholars copying texts, and the low, bubbling laughter of tea being shared under shade canopies. Traders from the north set up tents decorated with North African patterns, and minarets rise like fingers pointing to the sky. On the other side, the royal court, half palace, half fortress, half spiritual Disneyland. This is where the gold dust ends up, in jars sealed with wax, in sacks guarded by soldiers who never seem to blink, in ceremonial bowls used only for special rites like the Festival of the Rain Summoning, where the king offers gold to the sky itself. You sneak a look into one of the royal warehouses. It's dim inside, but you can just make out the shapes of clay jars, hundreds of them. Some are labeled with tiny ivory tags, others with bits of knotted string that only a select few know how to read. And then there's the big one. A vault carved directly into the ground and lined with stone. Inside, not coins, not jewels, just powder. Gold dust finer than flour, packed so tightly it smells earthy. This, they say, is the king's private reserve, and its exact weight is a state secret. Quirky twist, the king of Ghana banned the use of gold nuggets in private transactions. Only gold dust was allowed to circulate. The nuggets, those were royal property. Why control? If you control the form of currency, you control the value. It's like the medieval version of printing money, except way shinier. But don't get too dazzled. With great treasure comes great paranoia. The treasury is guarded not just by soldiers, but by ritual. Spells. Curses. You spot a priestess painting a doorframe with white clay mixed with crocodile dung and charcoal meant to keep away thieves and bad spirits. If you're superstitious, you don't even look at the royal gold without whispering an apology to the ancestors. You duck out of the treasury and into a courtyard where the lesser nobles are counting their spoils. One argues over a tax adjustment, claims he brought salt from Tagazah himself. The scribe doesn't blink. And did your camels also write receipts, he asks. Burn. And it wasn't just about income. Ghana used this gold to fund everything: armies, judges, musicians, even holy men. It greased the gears of an empire, whether for defense, diplomacy, or display. A king who gave generously was seen as blessed. A stingy king probably cursed, or soon to be overthrown. And yes, there were gold scandals. One folktale tells of a prince who dipped a mango in molten gold to impress a suitor. The suitor declined, and the prince was exiled for wasting royal treasure. The moral, don't play with your food when it's part of the national economy. The sun begins to fall, casting long shadows over the gold-washed walls. In the distance, a caravan prepares to leave, this time heading north. Salt in tow, gold left behind. It's a strange exchange, isn't it? The Ghana Empire never needed to conquer the world. It just needed to sit still and let the world bring its riches to them. One grain of salt, one pinch of dust, one silent deal at a time. You wake up to the slow clang of metal on metal and the smell of roasted millet cakes. It's a feast day in Kumbi Saleh, and you can already feel the buzz in the air. Flags of dyed cloth flap above the courtyard's musicians are tuning their instruments, and for once even the gold guards look like they might consider smiling, if only slightly. But beneath the celebration lies something deeper: the machinery of power. Today you're seeing how Ghana used its salt gold fortune not just to build cities or dazzle neighbors, but to engineer stability. And you're starting to realize it's not easy being rich. The first thing you notice is how organized everything is. Ghana wasn't some dusty kingdom scrambling for scraps. It had systems, like actual government departments. One group for managing caravans, another for monitoring weights and scales, a team for palace upkeep, a unit for spiritual enforcement, and of course a gold registry with more red tape than a bureaucrat's birthday party. Historians still debate how centralized the Ghanaian state truly was. Was it a true empire with iron-fisted control? Or a loose confederation of allied towns who just happened to follow the same king because, hey, he had all the gold evidence points in both directions? But what's undeniable is that Ghana mastered the art of balance. Because here's the deal: you don't survive centuries in the middle of a trade network without playing everyone just right. You treat Muslim traders well enough that they keep coming, but not so well that they start running the place. You let local chiefs keep their autonomy, but not enough to start calling themselves kings. You allow a bit of foreign religion, just enough for diplomacy. But at the core, you make sure that your gods still get top billing. And that's what today's feast is about, blending the divine and the political in a way only Ghana could. You find a seat under a palm leaf awning. In front of you, a long procession begins dancers in leopard skins, acrobats balancing on stilts and griots, singing the names of every king since the dawn of time. Each verse is like a mini TED Talk on royal policy, but with way better rhythm. Then the king appears. He doesn't walk, he glides. Carried on a litter of carved ebony, shaded by a parasol woven with gold thread, wearing robes so brilliant they reflect the sun in patterns across the crowd. His face is mostly hidden behind a veil, but his presence is massive. He's more concept than person. You catch a woman next to you whispering he can speak to the ancestors. Another mutters his spit can heal the sick. Whether true or not, the point is clear: this king isn't just in charge, he is the empire. Quirky detail. The king's court included a man whose sole job was to speak after the king, spoke repeating his words in a less divine, more regular guy voice. Kind of like a royal translator for mortals. Why? Because commoners weren't supposed to hear the king's voice directly. Too sacred. Too dangerous. Like trying to stare at the sun through a telescope made of hubris. And you don't just attend court, you perform in it. Everyone's dressed to impress. Even the tax officials have beads in their beards. You overhear a debate between two ministers, one defending a salt caravan that went missing in the dunes, the other arguing it was a spiritual redirection and not an economic loss. The king listens in silence, then gestures, and just like that, a verdict. Justice here is fast, symbolic, and when it works, surprisingly elegant. A camel goes to the injured trader. The salt is declared purified by its journey. The spirits are appeased. The economy moves on. That's the thing. Ghana didn't rule with just swords or treasure. It ruled with ritual. Every decision had layers: legal, spiritual, practical, theatrical. You weren't just obeying the king. You were obeying order itself. The sun reaches its peak. The smell of grilled fish and peppery sauces fills the air. People begin to eat in great communal circles, dipping millet into thick stews, toasting with fermented drinks, and sharing gossip about who wore what and who might be cursed by next week. And amidst the laughter and music, you realize something. Salt and gold didn't just fuel trade, they funded stability. They allowed a government that could reward loyalty, punish betrayal, and sponsor music festivals all in the same week. They allowed a kingdom where kings didn't just rule, they symbolized the balance of nature itself. Historians may still argue whether Ghana was the first true empire in West Africa. Some say yes, it had bureaucracy, tax systems, a standing army. Others point to Mali or Songhai for more centralized control. But everyone agrees Ghana built the foundation. And it built it with silence ritual and a whole lot of sparkle. As the feast winds down, musicians begin playing slower tunes. People doze under shade trees. Children chase each other between stalls. And above it all, the king retreats behind his curtain once more, unseen, untouched, but unquestionably present. You sip from a bowl of honeyed milk and feel the weight of it all. This wasn't just a kingdom, it was a carefully tuned machine. And gold was the oil that kept it running. Salt, the skeleton that held it upright, and the people. They were the heartbeat, steady, rhythmic, endlessly adapting. And somehow for now it all holds together. You wake the next morning to the sound of sandals scuffing packed earth and distant drums announcing the rising sun. But today there's no camel caravan in sight, no court musicians humming royal praise songs. Instead, you're following a quiet trail through a grove of tall grasses towards something less glittering, but more mysterious. Today, you're visiting the people behind the gold, the Wangara. They're the ghosts of the gold trade, mentioned in Arab accounts, whispered about in Berber stories, and occasionally glimpsed at the edge of a salt for silence exchange. But ask a Ghanaian merchant where their gold really comes from, and they'll just shrug. Somewhere in the forest, they say, where the Wangara live. And that's the thing. No one, not the Berbers, not the kings of Ghana, not even the traveling Islamic scholars ever found the Wangara's gold mines. Or if they did, they were very smart about pretending they hadn't. because keeping the location secret, that was everything. You pass through a village that isn't on any map. Mud homes blend into the trees. Smoke rises from hidden hearths. A group of children play with small stones carved into animal shapes, miniature crocodiles and antelopes, and oddly one shaped like a camel. A subtle joke, maybe. A man guides you in. He doesn't speak your language, but gestures for you to wash your feet and enter quietly. Inside his home, he opens a gourd and shows you a spoonful of gold dust. Fine. Bright. Almost glowing in the firelight. Then he closes it. Doesn't explain where it came from. Just smiles. Quirky fact. Some believe the Wangara had their own underground tunnels for transporting gold between villages. Narrow paths covered with palm leaves and hidden from view. Others say they used coded drums to communicate mine locations like forest telegrams, warning of raiders or tax collectors long before they arrived. Historians still argue whether the Wangara were a single ethnic group or a loose confederation of gold miners scattered across what is now southern Mali, Guinea, and Ghana. Some think Wangara was just a catch-all label for whoever happened to bring gold to market that week. Others insist it was a tightly knit network with its own secret language initiation rituals and taboos about outsiders. One tradition says Wangara children weren't even told the location of the mines until adulthood. Another says that if a trader revealed a mine's location to foreigners, his ancestors would visit him in dreams and make him forget it all by morning. Whatever the truth, you can feel it, these people do not want to be known. You ask one man how they mine the gold. He gestures vaguely toward the hills and says, "The earth knows what it gives. We just ask nicely." Okay, thanks, mystery monk. But over the next few hours, you piece together a rough image. Gold is extracted from riverbeds, sifted through woven sieves. Sometimes it's panned. Sometimes the river itself is diverted. The process is slow, careful, and deeply spiritual. Before digging, offerings are made: millet flour, kola nuts, sometimes a chicken. The land must be persuaded to give, and when the gold is collected, it's not hoarded. It's measured into gourds tied with string and distributed through a chain of trusted carriers, from village to village, grove to grove, until eventually it arrives at the silent trading spot carried by someone who may not even know where it started. You ask about kings. Do the Wangara serve Ghana, Mali, anyone? The response is a shrug and a smile. "We serve the river," one woman says. Which, when you think about it, might just be the smartest answer in this entire trade network. Because by staying neutral, secretive, and essential, the Wangara avoided wars, taxes, and jealous raids for centuries. They didn't need a throne. They had the gold, and that was enough. The sky darkens. A group gathers around a small fire. Someone begins to sing a low, rising tune with a rhythm that mimics the sound of water over stones. It's a gold song, you're told, about finding treasure without disturbing the spirits. You sit and listen. No one asks your name. No one asks why you're here. Because to the Wangara, presence is permission, and silence, that's trust. In a world that shouts about power, riches, and conquest, these are the people who whisper and still get paid. You lie back watching stars poke holes in the sky and realize that the greatest empire in West Africa was never just built by kings in golden robes or Berbers with camels. It was built by those who moved quietly, never needed to shout and let the land do the talking. You wake to the sound of bird song and the feel of damp forest earth beneath your fingers. Soft, springy humming with life. Gone is the dusty salt glare of Taraza, gone are the royal trumpets of Kumbi Saleh. Here the air smells like wet leaves and charcoal, and every footstep sounds like a secret being kept. You're deep in the southern trade belt now, the rainforest edge where Ghana's grass begins to loosen and nature begins to reclaim the path. And right here, gold isn't just wealth, it's ritual. You follow a narrow footpath that weaves through thick underbrush. Your guide, a boy with a face like carved wood and a nervous laugh, stops suddenly and lifts a finger to his lips. Quiet. Ahead is a river, slow and copper-colored. 3 women kneel in the shallows, sifting sediment through fine woven baskets. They don't notice you, or maybe they do and choose to ignore you. Either way, you're invisible here. And that's probably wise. Because this isn't just a river. This is sacred ground. Locals believe the river is alive, that it sleeps under the moon and listens during storms. Before panning for gold, they offer crushed kola nut and whisper a blessing. In a language so old it's more song than speech, you catch a few syllables. They sound like water and wind. The women's baskets yield flakes. Just a few, but even that is worth celebration. One of them grins and presses the dust to her forehead. "The river is kind today," she murmurs. This is where Ghana's gold journey really begins. In the mud under fingernails behind mosquito bites, not in the polished vaults of palaces or the pages of Arab geographers. Quirky local belief. If you take gold without permission, the river will turn on you. One tale tells of a man who tried to scoop up gold secretly at night. He vanished. Next morning, his clothes were found folded neatly beside the river. His boots were still dry. Coincidence or gold justice? You decide. Your guide leads you further downstream where the village smelters work. No massive forges here, just charcoal fires, bellows made from goat skin, and clay crucibles blackened with age. You watch as they melt down gold flakes into droplets, which cool into rough beads. And here's the wild part. Each bead is measured not by scale, but by sound. A master craftsman picks up a bead, flicks it gently against another, and listens. The pitch tells him its purity. If it rings high and clear, it's good. If it clinks dull, it needs refinement. You try it. Yours sounds like a frog tripping on a drum. The elder laughs politely. Historians still debate how advanced Ghana's metallurgy was. Some accounts say they melted, shaped, and even alloyed gold with shocking precision. Others argue most refining was left to North African traders. The truth. Probably a mix. But this much is clear: the people here understood the material spiritually as much as technically. To them, gold wasn't just a medium of exchange, it was a living thing. They wore it in charms to ward off illness, buried it with elders to honor the ancestors, melted it into tiny animal shapes for offerings. One boy shows you a gold gecko no larger than a thumbprint. For climbing away from trouble, he says. And unlike the flashy gold scenes at court here, it's subtle braided into hair tied around ankles, sewn into tunics and hidden lines. These are not status symbols, they're stories. As the sun rises higher, you notice more people emerging from the forest, trails, traders with baskets of smoked fish, women with clay pots balanced on heads, hunters with monkey tails tied at the waist like trophies. This is the hidden economy pulsing, like a secondary heart beneath Ghana's golden skin. You ask one elder if this wealth ever makes it to the king. He nods slowly. Yes, but only what the land allows. And that's the key, isn't it? This place doesn't believe in ownership the way empires do. Here, the land isn't conquered. It's negotiated with. You give thanks before you take. You bless before you weigh. You walk back through the trees as drums begin to echo from the hills. A ceremony is beginning, one to welcome the season of good digging. You won't attend. Outsiders rarely do. Instead, you watch from afar as dancers in bark masks and ochre paint swirl around a fire, their feet kicking up gold-flecked dust like glowing embers. It occurs to you this forest is the unspoken partner in Ghana's power. Quiet. Lush. Generous, but not endlessly so. Salt might have funded Ghana's rise. But this green breathing world of gold flakes and whispered rites. This is where its soul lived. And no empire can shine long if it forgets where the light first touched down. By now, your legs are dust-covered, your stomach's adjusting to whatever root stew the last village served, and your sleep cycle absolutely ruined. But you wouldn't trade it, not after what you're seeing now. You've reached the edge of Ghana's power. Not its border, no. Borders are lines on a map. This is fuzzier, softer, an area historians sometimes call the twilight zone of an empire. Not quite Ghana, not quite outside. It's where influence fades into uncertainty and neighbors become either friends or opportunists. You're in as the frontier, and frontier life, it's messy. You arrive in a market town called Audu, known in local legend as the place where a talking hyena once negotiated the price of salt. No one agrees on the ending. Some say the hyena married the merchant's daughter, others claim it ate him. Either way, the moral seems to be, don't lowball the hyena. The town sits at a crossroads, southern farmers bringing yams and kola nuts, northern traders with daggers and salt, and somewhere in between. Messengers of the king watching everyone like hawks with quill pens. What strikes you immediately is the blend. This is where cultures rub together so tightly they start swapping pieces. You see children with braided hairstyles common in the north, playing beside shrine stones dedicated to forest spirits. A mosque stands beside a grove where sacrifices are still offered in the old way, libations of palm wine feathers and murmured prayers. Ghana may be the dominant power here, but it's not everywhere. You can feel its grip loosening its voice softer, and yet gold still flows. So people stay loyal, mostly. You sit in on a town council meeting. Everyone's arguing, loudly, respectfully, barely. One elder wants to increase caravan taxes to pay for repairs after a herd of rogue cattle flattened the grain market. Another warns that squeezing traders too much might push them to bypass Ghana and entirely head east to new routes forming along the Niger River. That word again, Niger. It keeps coming up now. Traders talk about it. Griots hum songs that name it like a rival lover. Even local maps scratched into bark or drawn in the dirt hint at new trade towns rising near its banks. Djenné, Timbuktu, Gao. Places Ghana doesn't own, but probably should have started worrying about. Historians still debate whether Ghana saw the warning signs. Some say the empire adapted sending envoys and fortifying towns. Others argue it got too comfortable too golden and gets lost track of what was bubbling just beyond its borders. What we do know is this. Power in West Africa never sits still for long. You notice a group of foreign traders near the edge of the market. Their Soninka is speaking like the royal court, but their dialect is different, sharper. Their clothes are flashier, they're younger, hungrier. They don't kneel for the king's tax agents. You ask one of them if he serves the Ghana Empire. He laughs. We serve whoever helps us get rich. That's ominous, but also realistic. Because here's a truth that no empire wants to admit: loyalty has a price. And if someone else offers a better deal, well, so, long golden cord. Quirky local detail. In some frontier towns, merchants wear bracelets made of twisted wire, not gold, not silver, just coiled iron. They're charms meant to protect against betrayal. Twist one way, it shields your goods. Twist the other. It supposedly exposes liars in your caravan. No idea if it works, but no one's willing to test it out. You spend the night at a rest house run by an old woman named Sira, who claims to be a retired salt smuggler. She has 5 cats, 1 wooden leg, and more knives than bowls in her kitchen. She gives you tea and points to the northern stars. Empires fall, she says. That one's still falling. Took 100 years to rise. Might take just as long to drop. You don't sleep much after that, because suddenly everything feels fragile. The taxes, the rituals, the quiet gold. Even the silence itself, it all depends on a kind of collective belief. A trust that Ghana is the center, the pulse, the promise. But what happens when that belief shifts? What happens when a new road is faster? A new ally? Cheaper. A new king stronger. By morning, you're watching a small caravan head east away from Ghana's heart and toward the rising star of Mali. No drama, no fanfare. Just one more thread being pulled loose. And all you can do is wonder how many more before the whole golden fabric begins to fray. You're starting to notice the quiet, not the peaceful kind like soft rain or lullabies. No, this is the uneasy, echoing kind. The kind you hear after something breaks and everyone's waiting to see if it stays broken. You're back in Kumbisala, but something's different. The markets are thinner. A few of the Berber stalls are gone. One of the royal scribes, the guy who used to brag about weighing gold dust blindfolded, has vanished, no explanation. And the gossip, it's no longer about trade deals or court marriages. Now it's about whispers. You catch a group of merchants muttering under their breath. They say a new power is rising in the east, that it controls new mines, bigger caravans, even better horses. That it calls itself Mali, and that it's king. He's just as obsessed with gold as Ghana's, but far less polite about it. And here's the kicker. The people don't sound mad about it. They sound curious, almost intrigued. You visit the palace district, once buzzing with color and musicians. Now the guards look bored. The courtiers argue over tax policies that no one seems to be enforcing. Even the ceremonial drum has fallen silent. One boy tells you it broke during the last festival and hasn't been repaired. It's just a drum, someone shrugs. But you know better. In Ghana, nothing is ever just a drum. You hear about the Almoravids, those fierce Berber warriors from the north who raided Ghana about a century ago. Some say they weakened the empire permanently. Others argue Ghana recovered. But the truth, the raid planted something doubt. And empires run on confidence like camels run on water. Now that water's drying up. Quirky twist in some neighborhoods, people are using cowries again. Tiny shells, pre-gold currency. Once used by fishermen and forest villagers, it's not a big deal yet. But it feels like a signal. Like people hedging their bets just in case. Historians still debate exactly why. Ghana fell. Was it climate change drying up the trade routes? Was it internal rebellion? A shift in gold veins? Or was it just the slow, inevitable wobble of a world outgrowing its axis? You're starting to think it was all of that and something more. You visit the old salt registry building. It's half collapsed. Ivy climbs the walls. Inside, you find a cracked tablet with trade figures etched into it. The last entry, fewer caravans. Less gold, higher taxes, and a single word repeated twice. Diversion. Someone somewhere stopped trusting Ghana, and that was enough. You speak to a griot, an elder with a voice like sand and smoke. He sings you a new verse, one not yet made public. It speaks of a lion king whose mane grew too heavy, so the wind carried it away, strand by golden strand. You ask him if the lion was Ghana. He doesn't answer, just plucks his harp and hums. Outside the city, you watch a new caravan form. The camels look younger. The guards speak with an unfamiliar accent. Their destination not Tagaz, not even the Niger Bend. They're headed for Niani, the capital of Mali. You approach one of the traders. He's friendly, fast-talking, dressed in layers dyed deeper than Ghanaian indigo. You ask if he's moving for safety. He laughs. No, for opportunity. And there it is. The nail in the coffin of every aging empire, not rage, not rebellion, but the slow migration of ambition. You watch them leave. No one stops them. No royal decree. No patrol. Just a line of gold-bound camels marching out of history and into the next chapter. By evening, the palace is still. The king hasn't appeared in days. A scribe tells you he's meditating. Another says he's ill. A third says he's simply waiting for signs. You look around at the crumbling infrastructure, the thinning trade lines, the cautious eyes of the market women. You are the sign, and you don't need a historian to confirm it. Ghana isn't dead yet, but it's no longer the center. The silent trade, the sacred gold, the river-born rituals, those stories are already being retold in new voices under new banners. And all you can do is whisper thanks to the ancestors for letting you witness the glow before the fade. The wind feels different now. Cooler maybe. Softer. Or maybe it's just you knowing this is your final night walking through the embers of an empire. You're standing on a hill just outside Kumbi Saleh, watching the horizon blur into blue. The city lies behind you, still flickering, with lanterns still humming with griot songs, but quieter than before. You can almost hear the breath of history being exhaled. This is where we leave Ghana, but not before you feel the weight of its legacy. You spend your morning walking one last loop through the capital. Past the market stalls that now carry more kola nuts than gold. Past the prayer circles where imams and traditional priests still offer blessings side by side. Past the worn cobblestones that once felt the footsteps of kings, traders, poets, and sandal makers alike. Everywhere you go, people talk less about today and more about what used to be. You sit with a boy carving birds out of baobab wood. He tells you his father used to guard the treasury. Not the current treasury, the real one, back when dust fell like stars. You ask what he'll do when he's older. He shrugs. Maybe follow the gold, maybe just stay. You nod. Empires fade, but people, they stay. The next hour, you visit the edge of the silent trade site. Just beyond the city. It's overgrown now, half claimed by weeds. The stones where goods were once left are chipped, worn by wind and time. You kneel and trace your fingers over one, a deep groove, probably made by the edge of a salt slab back when the trade was in full swing. You close your eyes, and for just a second you can hear it. The distant shuffle of camels, the rustle of veils, the creak of ropes, and the silence. That sacred, perfect silence. That was Ghana's genius, wasn't it? turning quiet into currency, turning mystery into law. Quirky final tidbit. There's an old belief passed down through Sonica whispers that if you sleep under the stars in the center of Ghana's oldest market on the right night of the year, the ghosts of the original traders will visit you. Not to scare you, but to ask if you've brought anything to barter. Gold for salt, salt for stories. Historians still argue whether the Guyana Empire ever truly ended, or if it simply transformed, bled into Mali, shifted into Songhai, rerouted itself in new soil and new names. Maybe what mattered wasn't the kingdom, but the rhythm it set in motion. A pattern of trade, trust, and tribute that outlived any single throne. And maybe that's the point. Empires rise, empires fall. But the path? They cut the grooves worn deep by footsteps, hooves, voices, dreams, those never truly disappear. You sit on that hill until dusk. Watch the final rays of sun catch on the golden brown roofs. Hear the drum beats drift up from distant courtyards, faint but still there. Somewhere a camel bell rings. Somewhere a child laughs. Somewhere gold dust slips through someone's fingers. And beneath it all, silence. The kind that hums, the kind that remembers. You lie back. Let your heartbeat slow. Let the night wrap around you like a soft wool cloak. No more questions, no more footsteps, just this. You walked with an empire, and for a moment it let you listen. The stars stretch above you, quiet and ancient, watching as they always have. Your breath comes easier now, slower, like the trade winds softening after a long journey. The warmth of the day fades into the hush of evening, and your body relaxes into the rhythm of the earth beneath you. In your mind, the images of Ghana flicker gently like firelight behind closed eyelids. Salt walls glowing under desert sun. Gold dust slipping through open palms. The low hum of a courtier's harp echoing across a silent trade plaza. You let go of the weight of history. Let it settle into the sand where it belongs. The ancestors smile in your memory, distant, kind, patient. You hear their laughter in the leaves, their stories in the slow breeze. No urgency now, no maps. Just the calm knowledge that some journeys continue long after your feet stop walking. Feel your limbs grow heavier. Feel your mind grow lighter. Let the echoes of empires fade into stillness. Let the gold of the day melt into dream. You've earned your rest, traveler. The story will be here when you wake. I end of script. Sweet dreams. you